Welcome to the Just a Thinker podcast, where we will ask questions tied to believers and asking, does our worldview actually reflect a biblical worldview? Are we are we asking enough critical questions of our own beliefs and looking at how that's applied to politics, which is public policy meets ethics, and then also just living out our faith day to day, right? Are we critically evaluating that? And I have found that one of the best ways to do that is not only through my own personal study or daily devotion, being aware of what's going on in society, but, and especially so, I think, having conversations with other believers who have maybe been a little further down the road or see things differently, have different experiences, because as Proverbs says, iron sharpens iron, and having another person share their experience or have a discussion really makes a significant difference. And today I have a good longtime friend, David Ross. Brother Ross I think you're working on your local license, right?
Sir.
You're working on your local license. You've been
Assuming
teaching.
they'll have me.
I'm certain they will. You've been teaching for a long time. We have been part of the same congregation for a number of years. You attend a different congregation now, but you are involved in a variety of leadership roles. And today we're going to talk about unanswered prayers. And I would guess that you have had a lot of those because your family has experienced, well, in some ways, many miracles. But to get those miracles, we have to have challenges and setbacks that we don't generally ask for in advance. So I'm really looking forward to our discussion today. I am thankful that you're willing to share because, again, unanswered prayers is probably not just you're not driving the car you prefer, right? You're at 21, that might have been a prayer that went unanswered, but at this stage, I'm sure they're far more significant. So, David, feel free to tell us a little more about yourself, but I appreciate you being willing to share, especially talk about a topic that can be quite painful or something we struggle with as believers.
Right. And I think it's something we need to address. So, yeah, I mean, I've been, pondering this since I have started looking at my licensing, and, I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm kind of a unicorn when I go in to do the review. It's like, okay, how long have you been a Christian? And you're just now seeking, to become a preacher, so to speak. But at 57, I have had a lot of life that's happened to us. And, it's, you get that pie in the sky. You see some preachers out there and some ministers that, God's always going to answer every prayer. And I just know that's not true. And I've always kind of known that. And there's this tension between the now and the not yet. Right. And so trying to come to grasp with that. But a couple, 3 years ago, I really took it upon myself. I'm going to explore this. Just to give you that, you've talked a little bit about our background. 16 years ago, last month in April, my wife was in a car wreck that almost took her life. And within a minute of the accident, there was an ambulance stopped at the only light in town, headed the other direction. She has the accident behind them. They turn around. And so within a minute of the accident, she's getting care. Had that not happened, she would have died on the scene. And so there was this miracle right there that, that she was immediately getting care, and the 3 children were in the car with them. And one of them had a little bit of a situation with the growth plate from hitting his head on the dash. The airbags did not deploy, but basically all 3 of my children got out of the car unharmed. And so that's another miracle. And so you start looking at God did all this stuff in the middle of that. And there's a huge story around that. And yet she lives with pain to this day. And, if he could have the ambulance waiting 2 blocks behind, why did he not prevent it in the first place? And so you really start wrestling with that. And then as I began to explore the topic, there's several books. I wish I could come to you and say, I've written a book, as so many people do on podcasts. I don't have a book I've written yet. I've got a couple. Not yet. maybe soon, we'll get around to that one. But I looked at, there's one of them, and I'll mention it here towards the end, just to kind of give people, if they want to really try to wrestle with this on their own. And so I did. I wrestled with it, and it was a rich journey. It was a hard journey.
No doubt.
And I didn't get answers I wanted out of it, but I did come to a conclusion that's brought me just an immeasurable amount of peace on that. And so I think it's worth talking about, because, you will not get every prayer answered. Some prayers will never be answered. Other prayers we're not going to see answered until we get to the other side.
Right.
And then, like I said, some prayers that we really want answered now, 10 seconds into eternity, are not going to matter at all. And so
That's true.
throw those out the window, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they feel so important in the now, in the natural, but in the context of eternity, not going to matter, right? I mean, you've heard those preachers. Well, when I get there, I got some questions I'm going to ask God. I don't think we're going to have nearly as many questions for him as we thought we did. And so
I think that's
what
true.
it's done for me is it's really settled some things in my life, and I'm able to take a much more peaceful approach to it. And there's some, again, you look at this tension and you see the debates that happen on the campuses and stuff like that. Here's this good God, right? And he has loved me from eternity past, right? Because when Paul wrote, and this is really rich in Ephesians, when Paul wrote that neither death nor life nor angels nor principalities nor powers nor any created thing could separate us from the love of God, he was able to say that because the love of God predated all of that.
Right.
Before there was anything that could get between me and him, he loved me. And so death will not separate me because he loved me before death existed. Angels can't separate me because he loved me before there were angels. And it's just like, wow, that settles on you. And if you can really walk in that, and then when you face those situations and you say, why are you not dealing with this? And, he's right. He's just, he's good. He wants what's best for me. And yet we get into this dichotomy that, okay, you want what's best for me, but you're all powerful and you're omnipresent, you're omniscient, and you don't change, and you're sovereign, right. All these things like that. Why are you not answering some desperate, heartfelt cries of your children? And when I don't have any answer. And at the end of the day, I don't know why. I'm not about to come here and do that. But I think there's a bunch of aspects, and it's such a rich topic. I'm just going to throw some things out as I'm thinking about them. And I've preached on it, I've taught on it, read about it, meditated on it, dealt with it. In addition to my wife's situation, we've got a special needs son, and that's a valley that never ends, right? So if you've got a child that's deathly ill and they die, that's tragic, that's horrible, but it has an ending, right? And time heals that pain over time. When you have an ongoing situation that's never going to change, what do? Right? And you just have to walk it, right? Yes. And so, and we're not the first ones to have this wrestling match, right?
But
my mom died at 59.
Oh, she was,
so
at our age, that's very young, isn't it? I mean,
right, I'm almost that age now, right? So she's had, 20 plus years of missing my kids growing up, and my kids having memories that she's just a faint, distant memory to them now, right? Where do we go from here, right? And so, and I think also when we think about it, Jesus had an unanswered prayer, and this is where I draw so much comfort, right? He was in the garden. His humanity was crying out, I don't want this, God. Just no. Right. And God basically didn't respond until he came to that wrestling match and came to that point and says, okay, God, your will be done, not mine. And, we're kind of in that holy weekend right now, right? We have these promises that are coming. We have this God that's going to do some things in the end, but we're in that in-between state, right? They didn't know Sunday was coming, even though he had told them over and over and over again, right? So,
right there, yes.
They were probably thinking, why? And why did he have to go through that? And why? We saw him do all this other stuff. Why didn't he bring himself down, right? I mean, who knows what those kind of prayers were going on, right? But they have that, and so some of the things that have come out in from the reading I've done in this personal experience, we're not the only one on the planet,
right?
And I think Christianity, especially modern Western Christianity, it's me and Jesus, right? No, it's not. It's you and the rest of the planet, right? And so the simple example is I'm going to the airport. I am late for my flight, or I've got a connection. Let's say I've got a connection, right? So I'm on the plane saying, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. I don't want this plane to be late because if I miss that connection, everything falls apart for me, right? I've got this urgent thing I've got to get to. And then at the other end of the airport, there's a guy racing in saying, this flight is taking me to my mother's funeral. Please let it be late so that I can get on that plane. So here's these two Christians praying to God. One's praying, let's get out of here. The other one's praying, hold on. And so God's up there in the ultimate master chessman with 8 billion pieces, figuring out which one of those would make the most sense for his will to answer in that moment, right? So there could be contradictory prayers going up.
Right.
You know, the sillier one is, I root for A&M because that's where I graduated. You root for the Longhorns. They're going to
Right.
play. Well, God, let my team win. Well,
Right. Right. No, I think, when you mentioned just not only the me and Jesus, but I think when you mention Western Christians, this is something I appreciate that, our pastor would talk about, usually irritated me when he would say it, but, we would mention Western Christians and our individualistic ideologies, right? And it always rubbed me a little raw. I appreciate that he would talk about these things because it's important to our growth. And as I get older, more trips around the sun, hopefully a little wiser, I understand it better, right? Because I do need to do my part, but there is a community. The believers cover the globe, right? It's not just, you'll hear Americans go, well, the Lord must be coming back because the president with the D or the president with the R is not in office. So it's bad. I'm like, have you heard of Venezuela? How about North Korea, Iraq, Pakistan? Pick any number of other countries, they might actually be thinking they're deep in the book of Revelation, in the tribulation, and God has forgot about them. That's probably what they're wondering, where are we at now, right? Our
Right.
politician, yes. So and then you bring it down to a closer, more personal, yes, one's praying for that plane to hurry up and go. The other, please don't go. And in your experience too, because for Sister Tanya, I can't see someone's pain, right? I could
Right.
see if she was injured, but when the injury, the physical, the sling is gone, or the, whatever's around the shoulder, those things are gone. I can't see her pain. So
Right.
I can't appreciate beyond just knowing that I can't see pain, what you all face as a couple,
Right.
because again, we can't see ongoing pain. I cannot, I'm a parent, but I can't fully put myself in your shoes
Yeah.
because
I mean, having to
Jonathan will
make
need
decisions. Yeah. I'm
care.
having to make decisions
Yes.
that no parent should ever have to make.
Right.
And what do you do with that? And it kind of coupled with that, when you talk about people around the world, you look at the prayers that they pray. A bad situation comes to Americans, we pray for the situation to be resolved. Bad situation comes to those people, and they pray for the strength to walk through it.
Yes.
Right? They understand that, and you think about life is tough. I think C.S. Lewis put it something like, whatever book it was, lay this book down and reflect on the fact that when all of the great religions were first preached and long practiced in a world without chloroform or without anesthetics, right? And you drop us back 100 years ago, and we'd be going outside to go potty.
Right. No,
I mean,
I'm thankful we live in this day and age. We're sitting
I mean,
inside
no
an
air
AC.
conditioning. Air conditioning was not a thing until in households until the 60s, right? And we're
Right.
only 60 years removed from that, right?
Right.
Just things like that. And so life is tough. I mean, we're in a fallen world,
Yes.
and our rich culture has brought us to the point that we expect everything to go well and be whatever. I'll read you this quote. It came out of the book, and it's just one of those things. Here's a person. She was diagnosed with throat cancer. Her name was Margaret Lee, and it was inoperable because it was up against an artery and some nerves, and they just could not go in there. And so it was actually affecting her ability to swallow.
Oh.
Right. And so soon she was not, they could do nothing for her. And everyone's telling her, this is horrible. We're so sorry this has happened. And she had to write her answer out because she was unable to speak at this point. And I'll try to get through this without losing it. This is not the worst thing to ever happen. Cancer is so limited. It cannot cripple love, shatter hope, corrode faith, eat away peace, destroy confidence, kill friendship, shut out memories, silence courage, quench the spirit, or lessen the power of Jesus. And if somebody can walk with that, my situation doesn't feel nearly as bad as I think it is, right? Life is not fair. Life is hard. And Jesus told us that,
Right.
but not to the Western culture, not to our culture in this world today, right? It's going to be, you're always going to be, and again, I'm not going to name the preachers, but you're always going to be blessed, and you're going to walk in favor, and you're always going to be head and not the tail. That's just not true.
Right.
You are going to face things in your life that can devastate you.
I think that's important to remember, right? When you had mentioned the obvious, but we have to be reminded of, hey, we're in a fallen world.
Hmm.
So I can make choices that are unfair to you, right? I can do
Right.
bad things. I can be unkind. I could be the guy that runs through the stoplight, right? I could have been that person that hit your family, right? Just I wasn't, but I could have been, right? In a sense
Hmm.
of it could be anybody, and you're like, why, right? We're in a world where I can make a choice that negatively impacts you, and that's not fair, and that's difficult, right? Really, really difficult. Someone the other day, I wish I could remember so I give them proper credit, said, if we pray for God to take out evil, if he answered that prayer, there would be none of us left.
None of us would be left.
That is
Absolutely.
true. And that's sobering, and it's important to be reminded of. And the Christian life, sometimes I think it's a lot of suffering with moments of joy, but the important thing is, right, the Lord drew us, we responded, so now we have that big box checked. I
Right.
couldn't redeem myself. He paid the price. Um, because our lives are so good, I'm generally not going to be in trouble for preaching the gospel, right? We're not going to have the same challenges that believers in other countries or just people in other countries, again, the Venezuelans, the North Koreans, that just having food today is
Yeah.
just, and it's
Well,
not because they don't know how to grow a crop, right? It's
right.
not a lack of technology or knowledge or desire or intellect. There's corrupt government, corrupt
Right.
people, right, that are hindering them. That's certainly not fair.
Right.
It is really difficult.
And I forget who it was that said it. People look at their circumstances and they say, why? And he says, let's flip it around. What we should be looking at our circumstances and say, why not? I mean, given my depravity, given my fallen nature,
Right.
given my absolute rebellion against God, even all these years I've been trying to follow after him, I have willfully gone against him. I've willfully disobeyed him. I have done things that I knew I shouldn't do at the time I was doing. I mean, that's the human
Right.
experience, right? And here's a holy God that's just and right. And so when good things come into my life, that's when I should be asking why.
That's a great
It's
way to
not
look at
when
it.
bad things, the bad things, that is just, I'm in, we're in a fallen world that's been
Right.
corrupted. Yeah, stuff's going to happen, right? It's when, why the good stuff, Lord? Why do we still have love? Why do we still have joy? Why do we still have peace? And when as you alluded to, if I've got, when I was teaching the hyphen way back then, the college age kids, you can make just say you're buying a car, you make all the research, you get the best deal you can, you drive off the parking lot, get T-bone coming out of the parking lot. I mean, the only thing I'm guaranteed in this life is that, you know, I will leave this earth someday. And if I'm in right relationship with him, I'm going to spend eternity in his presence. Nothing else is guaranteed.
Correct.
There
And
is nothing else guaranteed. If he heals me, I'm still going to die someday.
yes, sir.
There's only been a couple of guys that got out of here without
Right.
dying, Elijah and Enoch and maybe
Right.
somebody else. But, it's just everybody's going to face that. Lazarus died again, right?
Yes.
The,
That's important
this,
to be
the,
reminded of, right?
yeah,
The Lord
they wanted
rose
to
him
kill
from the
him,
dead.
right?
Yeah. Right. We got to put this guy back in. And he eventually, yes.
Yeah. So, and I think one of the things that God wants out of us is he wants that relationship more than he wants what I want, right? He wants me to be in a relationship with him in ways I
Right.
can't even fathom. I mean, when we look at the horrific thing he did on the cross, and these people that say that God winks at sin, no, he took sin very, very seriously. There's
Right.
depictions of what his body probably looked like after the beating he got. I mean, exposed bones,
Right.
exposed organs, because they basically ripped the skin off of him completely, especially his back. And he paid that price because he wants me to be in relationship with him. He doesn't care in the big picture if I'm healed of that disease or whatever, right? Am I in relationship with him? And there's another aspect, and this is maybe another topic in and of itself, but the idea that that brokenness is almost a requirement to be in a deeper relationship with God. Because when you look at like some of the great hymns that we have and some of the great moves of God and movements that have happened, they were born out of suffering,
Right.
right? And so God seems to speak clearly about things on the periphery. And then I get to these deep things in my life and he's not answering me. And could it be much like with Jacob in his wrestling match? He enjoys the wrestling match itself. You're wrestling with me. You're involved with me. You're coming to me, and we're having this interaction going on. It's not always pleasant, but there's something happening in your spirit that you can't even see. One of the things I've taken away from the story of Jacob in this wrestling match is everybody always emphasizes the blessing, right? I want you to, I'm not leaving till you bless me, right? I'm not going to let you go unless you bless me. I think another way to look at that wrestling match is he cheated his brother twice. He lied to his father. He never had their approval. He never had their real blessing in his life.
Right.
Now, obviously, they reconciled later on, but that was still in the back of his mind. Could it be that in that wrestling match, he was saying, I'm not leaving until you bless me. I want you to put your proclamation on me. Whatever that is,
Right.
I want it from you.
Instead of taking it.
Yeah,
right? Or
I'm not going to take it. I need you, and it's you that has to confer it to me. And right. Could that be it? I don't know. But I mean, we have the stories of what a friend we have in Jesus, and what's the other one? It is well with my soul, right? I mean, here's a guy that loses his son and he goes sends his family on a trip. His family's killed except for his wife on the overseas trip, and so he's going to rejoin his wife in Europe, and in that moment, when peace like a river attends my way, it is well with my soul. And so in that brokenness, he tapped into something that right. blesses us to this day. Yeah. And it could be that God's working something in me that through not answering, through my wrestling, through my struggling, I'm deepening something that I'm going to be able to bring to somebody else in some shape, form, or fashion.
I appreciate that. And, when we receive that salvation experience, that's the lottery we sort of all work for financially, right? Like that's mm-hmm. saying someday you will live forever, which, even atheists, every one of us has that desire to live, right? Not to perish, technology, we're constantly looking for ways to extend our life. So that desire to live, God checks that one. So, okay, you're going to live for eternity. And it's going to be so amazing that however great you can imagine, and our imaginations can be pretty impressive, it's going to be better. And right, the scripture relates that, the streets are paved with gold. And you'll hear different preachers, talk about this and say, is it literal gold? Maybe. But the point is this: the thing which we as humans put the most value on, for all of human history, pretty much, the thing that we will die for and we work for and we strive, that is paving material.
Right.
That is how great the rest of eternity will be. So he's given us that. And as you're mentioning that stroke, I think about that you were mentioning how he wants a relationship with us. So it's not, I kind of think of that and say, okay, his relationship is not always, it's for us to be together, but not always him just sort of giving you a blank check. Everything is, I'm going to take every problem from you. I realize that, and you have, multiple children, you grandchildren, so you probably do as well, where you're thinking, oh, now, not everything that you faced, right, was something you did not, no one in your family chose the car wreck. You didn't choose that. Right. That wasn't a choice. It wasn't, your wife wasn't all liquored up and, put the kids in the car and was putting them in danger. It was none of that, right? This was no fault of her own. Those things, just no answer. But there are things that I've done in my life where I've deserved the consequences. But I watch it with my children, and it's okay. Here's things that if you do these things, life will be better. And when you don't, it'll be rougher. And sometimes I'm dishing out the consequences. Sometimes life or a boss is dishing out the consequences. And there's moments you go, oh, do I protect them from that? Maybe not, right? They have to, or if, now we're not wealthy, but there are things that we could buy for the kids that we don't. Because learning to mow a yard and earn the money, now again, that's not the same thing as struggling through a wreck of that nature. But, I can see in some ways where certainly the Lord withholds things that wouldn't be good for us. We think they're good. And
Well,
then
well,
if he
and,
solved
you know,
every problem, right,
well, yeah.
what
Let
would
me
happen
interrupt you.
if he
I mean, think about it. We see examples in the natural of that happening, right? I mean, if you give somebody everything they want in life, you ruin that
right,
person, right? We all have the stories of all the performers that
right.
make these outlandish claims and demands on people. I actually have a couple of them here in front of me, right? Yeah, we're going to name names. Jennifer Lopez supposedly asked for a private plane, several hotel rooms for a show in India. She demanded 9 dressing rooms, and she brought a 90-person entourage to
Wow.
a British talk show. I mean, and so when you
My
look at people that
goodness.
get everything they want in life without any restraint and stuff like that, it ruins them. And so, how much more about God is?
Right.
If God answered every, and let's just step back a little
Well,
bit. Look at the
answered it the way
nature of
we
God.
want, right? Answered it the
If
way
He
I want.
answered every prayer, is He really God? Where's His sovereignty?
Mm,
Where's His will? Where's His
right.
choices? You know, he is uncontrollable, and I think sometimes he has to hide himself to find out: are you going to seek me?
Yes.
Do you want me for what I'm doing, or do
Right.
you want me for me?
That's the part, right? That's I think that I think in all of us it requires a struggle to understand that. And I will always share. I really appreciate. Um, I'm going to just say this: marriage is hard. I
Oh yeah,
appreciate that you're married. No, I
yeah,
don't have any secret knowledge of, you've shared like that any issues, but I know marriage is hard. I personally made it hard in our family, but you have faced things that you didn't bring on from, we don't, our children are born, we don't get to choose how that happens, right?
right,
So you've had challenges that you will, again, they will exceed your lifetime. That
right.
can break up a marriage. Pain, again, just knowing myself, again, no reflection of, if your wife happens to listen to this, you've never complained or shared anything. I'm just eh, you know uh,
Thank you for that. I might need that cover.
well, I don't want to, like I said, I cause my own problems. I certainly don't need to cause any in your household, but I know, like, okay, just human nature, those are challenging things, and no doubt those were difficult for both of you. She certainly, no one enjoys suffering and all that goes with it. But you're married. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. It's an example to others,
Yeah,
because
thank
we, though those things that you go through and you talk about your testimony, right?
you. Mhm.
Testimonies, miracles come from bad, bad stuff. Rarely is our testimony, hey, I was digging in the backyard, I got the metal detector out, and I found some Civil War gold. We have
Yeah,
$50 million. That's that's rare. It's usually we went through something horrific and we survived. And
right,
just that, hey, you're married. Um, I've only heard you care for your wife, right? And so
right.
that alone is a testimony of God. I would say, God
Yeah,
working in your lives, and it's a witness to others, because it is very easy, especially in modern America, when something is going tough, to just,
pack up and go.
yes, and for both parties. I mean,
Yeah,
I can't imagine what spending years, multiple years, a decade in pain, just
yeah.
just how hard that is on Tanya, right? Like,
Well,
and
I got a little taste of that. Of course, Steve Green, right? And he's got
yes,
the book out there, Keep Walking. I mean, that man talks about how that accident was such a blessing in his life. And okay, falling 4 stories, flat
ooh,
feet first, and shattering basically every bone in your body was a blessing. Okay, you are a far better man than I
uh,
can ever hope to be, right? But I got a little glimpse of that here a couple of years ago. It was in a different season. I was here's a prayer to pray, Lord, break me, right? So anyway,
I'm not
that's a whole
that
other.
brave yet. I prayed for
It
patience
took me a
once.
while to build that up, and so stuff started happening in my life, right?
Mm,
And so I woke up July 4th weekend a couple of years ago, and I couldn't get out of bed because I was in so much pain
oh,
overnight. And I'm like, what? I mean, I'm walking like I'm 90, and I can't work out. I'm in tears trying to do push-ups. I'm like, every joint in my body hurt, my neck, my shoulders, my fingers, my hands. I'm swollen. I'm like, what happened? And I'll go to the doctor and finally figured out it was a drug-induced lupus
oh
from
wow.
one of the and I'd been taking this medication for a couple of years for my blood pressure. And I'm like, okay, what do we do? And so from July, and then we finally figured out a plan and got ready for it. And I had to come off that medication. So I did that in October over Halloween weekend. So for basically July, August, September, 4 months, I was in literally just in excruciating pain almost every day. and trying to get through that. And then coming off of that medication and having that was the worst 5 days of my life as
Wow.
my body flushed that stuff out of there. And then it's gone. And, but in that time, I wasn't really thinking about unanswered prayers, but it was that uncertain. Is this the rest of my life? Is this something I'm not going to be able to control? What is this? Is this some kind of weird rheumatoid arthritis derivative that they never, or
Right.
anything like that? And, hey, you got the genetic markers for, well, my mom had lupus. So that was, that's where somebody that, but anyway, so I got a glimpse of it. And, ironically, my wife was in another wreck last month, and so total her.
Yes.
She got T-boned at the intersection, had a car totaled, so
Oh,
she's having to go through. And it was kind of interesting. A couple of stories about her when she was in the hospital the first time. She was basically out of it for 3 days.
okay.
They brought her in. She was interacting with us, but she doesn't remember any of it. And we found out later that the nurses were fighting for the opportunity to come take care of her. And so I talked to one of them about it. I said, what's going on? Because I stepped out in the hallway. No, it's my turn. No, it's my turn. And so I said, what's going on here? Hey, what are you talking about? And they said, when we walk in that room, there is a peace that we have not felt anywhere else in this hospital before. And my wife, and her mother-in-law helped write a book about it. She was in the presence of Jesus for that time, and God was doing a work in her life. And she still hurts today. She still suffers. I don't understand God. I mean, again, he can change circumstances in a heartbeat. And I've had those kind of prayers get answered. And I am thankful for those situations.
Right.
One of them was involving my retirement. I mean, I've been worried about my retirement for a long time. And in a 15-minute, or actually about 10-minute conversation, odds are that's been taken care
Awesome.
of, and it's like, thank you, Lord, for what you're doing for me. And I think just kind of, I don't know how quickly or how long you want to wrap this thing up, but there's some things that I've settled in my spirit as a result of coming through this, and we can continue the conversation
keep
after.
going.
But for me, the biggest takeaways I have is that, just because God does not answer does in no way diminish his capacity for that. And again,
Right.
that's where that tension comes in, right?
Yes.
And it's not that he's not capable.
Right.
It's not that he doesn't care.
Right.
And it's not that he doesn't know. And it's not that he will not. He may not now, but maybe he does that. But when God is silent, he's not absent.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things that we in our culture kind of take that from. God is not, it's not that he's telling me no, he's just not answering. And I settled it in my spirit many years ago. Lord, you are stuck with me. I am like Peter said, you have the words of truth. You are who you say you are. Where else can we go? And Lord, you are stuck with me. If I never feel your presence again, you're stuck with me. If you never bless me again, and people say, I don't want to pray that. If he never does another thing for me, he's already done enough, as we've talked about in what he did on the cross.
I think that's part of that process you're talking about, right? For us to individually come to that conclusion, and that is part of our witness, is it not? Like Revelation, right, says they overcame by the blood of the Lamb, and the power of their testimony, right?
Right.
And that God saved us, blood of the Lamb, and in sharing our testimony. And those things are difficult things. Again, it's the testimony of, I'm very thankful. It's great to hear about your retirement, right? That's a blessing. Those are big blessings.
It's not a guarantee,
right?
But if things work out,
and I'm thankful for that.
Some stuff in place,
those are good things, and not to be diminished. But when you hear someone then really talk about the pain, the challenges, ongoing, healing needs, or someone's lost a loved one, or when parents have lost a child, or any of those things that are really, really hard, and then people have the attitude, the spirit, the approach that you do in that process, that, hey, well, I'm committed to him. I'm committed to my relationship with the Lord. That, right, it gives us a sense of humility when we're in that place, because we have, right, we're becoming in that kind of right understanding of our relationship to him. And it is a testimony to others. It's, hey, not just when things are good, that even when they're not, this is where I
Right.
am. And as someone who is, you're in a teaching position, you're in a leadership position, you're seeking out additional licensing, is you're saying, hey, I am right. And correct me if I get this off. When you're, when someone's seeking out the different licensing that our organization does, you're really saying, hey, I'm asking you to evaluate what I'm doing. Is it in line with biblical standards? Because ultimately you want to share with more people, right? You want to guide
Right.
and
Bigger platform to
shepherd
serve.
and, and encourage others. That that will lend a lot of credibility, right? And not that one seeks out the suffering,
Right.
but I can, if I was, as we sit down and talk, and all of them won't be recorded, but it'd be fun to record many. But, if we're just
Mhm.
sitting down having a cup of coffee, and if I was sharing a problem, you said, well, Brian, if I didn't know your story and you're sharing it, I'm like, whoa, okay. My
Yeah.
challenge today is not like having my wife be in pain for 15 years and then as things moderate, she gets hit again. When I saw that, I was like, "Oh dear Lord!" I said at
Yeah.
least a
Yeah.
quick prayer. It wasn't an hour long prayer, but it was. I was like,
Right.
"Dear Lord,
Well,
be
it was
with her,"
one.
because
It was
I
interesting
hurt.
on that one
I just
because somebody
hurt.
asked me, yeah, so how bad was the accident? I said, well, actually, I guess it wasn't that bad because, she had to take a trip and she's got broken ribs and broken
A
sternum. And I'm
broken
like,
sternum. That hurt me
David,
to
yeah,
hear that
David,
word.
that was serious. And I'm like, well, in light of 16 years ago, yeah, we weren't worried about if she's going to make it through the night, So
Oh.
it's a little bit different
Well, you
perspective
could
on
take that one
things
a
for
little.
me.
The rest of us are rookies. That you guys are in you're in the professional leagues. We're in the minors.
And there's this part of me, I don't know why it happened to her. I really, again, it could have been me. It should have been me. I wish it would have been me. And I mean that. And again, getting to that point of surrender in our life that,
Right.
it doesn't matter what you do to me or through me or with me or for me, Lord, I just want you, because Jacob lost his battle, right? He limped the rest of his life. He walked with that the rest of his life, but he knew that God had put something on him,
Right.
and he had that relationship. He was a prince with God, and I want Jesus more than I want my prayers answered.
Right.
Okay,
Well.
I want to know. Again, Paul wrote it, and we read it, but people don't get excited at the last part, right? That I may know him in the power of his resurrection
Oh, fellowship
and
of
the
his suffering.
fellowship of his
Yeah.
suffering.
I don't like. I wouldn't.
Yeah,
That praying that last part. That's right. That's
right.
really difficult stuff.
Right. Does it take more faith to want the relationship more than the miracle? Maybe it does, right?
Hmm.
And that's part of that growth and stuff like that. And so, before I forget, the book that has absolutely um, Pete Greig, Greig. I guess I can hold it
Yeah.
up for
Please. Why not?
the
There you
camera
go.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, God on Mute, and it's a
Cool.
fairly recent book. He explored it. His wife has a situation, and then he talked to a lot of people. That's where I got the story about the lady with throat cancer, and some of the things I've mentioned here are just thoughts that it's like he was able to encapsulate a lot of things. I'd come to the conclusions in just ways that were just remarkable. But there's a 40-day devotional that comes with it, and I wept about 39 of those days. I mean, just like, you're wrecking me. Oh gosh, you're wrecking me again. Oh my goodness, but it was so rich, and I wouldn't trade it for anything, and I really just don't think there's at the end of the day, I may not get the thing or the situation or whatever it is I'm praying about. I may never hear from God about it, but I really don't think there's any such thing as an unanswered prayer, because the in the ongoing wrestling, in the ongoing dialogue with Jesus, I'm getting my prayers answered in ways that I don't even know, and He's done things in me that I
Right.
don't even realize as a result of that. And I appreciate your kind words. Like somebody mentioned, when shortly after my wife's accident, she's in the hospital. I can do nothing for her. It's Sunday night. We're still having Sunday night services. I have to get to church, and I have to get my kids there. And I went down. Lord, I have no answers,
Right.
but here I am.
Right.
And I was not trying to impress anybody. I was not trying to be spiritual. I was just like, Lord, here I am. What do you have? Because I didn't know if I was going to be raising three boys by myself
No.
at that time, right? And what do you got for me, God? Here I am, and do with me as you will. And it's just so much of the life, so many things that we try to treasure, so many things that we think we need in our lives. They're just stuff.
Right.
And I am to the point that my pastor, he's been talking about that. He says one of his prayers, he actually had a heart attack in December and has a story around that and kind of came face to face with the possibility of having lost his life. And in one of his prayers, and I'm joined with him in it, is, Lord, take away, if take more, what is it? Give me less of what I don't need and more of what I do need today. And
Ooh,
if we look at our garages and our storage rooms and our attics and stuff like that, even just the physical stuff,
right.
there's so much in our life we really don't need. We moved over 2 years ago. I boxed some things up to move from the other house to this house, and they've been in boxes in my garage for 2 years.
Yeah.
And I have not touched those boxes since I moved them and put them on the shelves. And I'm in the process of going through and getting rid of those right now. It's just stuff.
Right.
And I think the less stuff we have in our life, the easier it is to come to God with that peace. And when He says no, I'm learning to understand. I enjoy the no, because at least it's an answer.
Right.
When He's silent and He doesn't answer, then it's on me. Okay, what am I in this for?
Right. Asking. Yeah.
What do I expect from Him? And He owes me nothing. He owes me absolutely nothing. And it is a rich place to be. And do I still rail about it? Do I still
Sure.
get? Absolutely. I am not about to elevate myself to saying I've got my act together. I question many times, like I said, why my wife, why her,
Right.
why not avoid, prevent the accident in the first place? Why this second accident? But we even looked at that. She had my son and our two of our grandchildren in the car with her up until minutes prior. She had just dropped them off and she was on her way to get some food when she got hit. And so I'm glad she was by herself. I'm not glad it happened,
Right.
but Jonathan would have been sitting on the side where the impact took place, passenger side. Could I be burying him? Could I be dealing with him being, an invalid or something? Could something have happened to either of my two grandchildren that were with her that day? So God, thank you for that.
Right.
I don't know why it happened, but thank you for that. And you didn't owe me that, Lord, but you chose in your mercy and grace to keep them out of the picture, because it would have absolutely destroyed my wife. If something had happened to our son or either one of those babies, it would have wrecked her, And so
No
God
doubt.
in His mercy said, you got to go through this again. I don't know why, but
Right.
at least you're not going to have to worry about that. And so I think if we look at it from those things, okay, I'm not getting this answer. What is it in this that you want to show me? What is it in this you're trying to grow in
I
me?
think that's important, what you just said, right? What should I be learning, right? What do I need to grow
Mm-hmm.
through? We all should pause and really think about that, right? Because that changes. Because I think when I hear you, tell me if I paraphrase properly, I know most of my prayers, I'm trying to mature through that. Often I have a request, but here's the answer I need, right? I've given you,
Of
Lord, I've done
course.
the work for you. Lord,
Yes.
here's the need. Like you go to your boss, I have this problem. Here's two solutions, right? I tried these others, they didn't work, but I come to you, David, and say, hey, I tried, A, B, and C didn't work, but I think D, E, and F would. Which do you think? Like I've given you, now
Right.
you might like that and say,
That
oh,
is a great way to do that in the natural.
yes,
That's a
right. That's
really good way to
because you can
manage
say,
up.
hey,
Right.
Brian, thanks. I have tried D and E. They're not going to work. Let's try F. Cool. Right. I go
Right.
back and you think, well, Brian's at least a competent team member. You want people to come to you. The Lord doesn't need that. I'm like, Lord, I've narrowed it down to one, maybe two. These are great.
Right.
And
Right.
you've changed your prayers, it sounds like. And that's what I'm working to do, because I
Yeah.
tend to I'm in this situation and trying to ask the questions you're asking, like, what should I be learning? I've had those, not that
Okay.
level, but still trying to say, Lord, okay, I don't know what to do here. You're probably trying to teach me something. I'm going to admit I'm an idiot. Could you tell me a little louder? Like I have learned to listen to my wife, because sometimes the Lord has spoken audibly through my wife. Because early in our marriage, I made some really poor financial decisions. And I was like, Lord, should I do this? If I could only hear your voice. And there'd be my wife going, no, we're not doing that.
yeah.
Lord, if you would just talk to me. If
Right.
I think you're saying yes. And Courtney's like, no. So I
Yeah. Yeah.
have gotten a little past that, but I want to be at that place like, okay, Lord, I'm not real bright. if there's multiple doors open, I'm not even sure just what am I supposed to learn. If you could tell
Right.
me, I will try to learn quickly. Right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to change my
I
prayers.
I am so tone deaf to him so often. It's I've got ringing in one of my ears tonight. Is one of my ears. That's I'm stiff necked and I'm deaf in one ear, Lord, and so you're just going to have to be patient with me or whatever.
I'm
And
talking your good ear.
again, there's all the things we need to do. Okay, am I praying amiss?
Right.
Am I? Is it trivial? Is it? Am I just doing it for the show? Right?
Right.
Can God make a rock so big he can't move it? God's not in. He's not going to answer those prayers.
Right.
Right? He's like, I didn't die on a cross for that,
Right.
kind of thing. Is there sin in my life? Is there an
Right.
attitude? Am I praying to manipulate other people? That's another thing I think we
No,
tend to do. Lord,
that's
save them, Lord. You got to speak to their heart. He's not going to, he doesn't force his will on anybody.
that's an
All I can do is pray that God gives them the right circumstances to that they could be willing to listen. But
that's
he's not going to force anybody to do anything. And so there's a lot of prayers that we pray. And I talk to my wife about this a lot of times. It comes from some other stuff we dealt with. But you know, I, if I'm praying or thinking woulda, coulda, shoulda for other people, I'm in their business. And if I'm in their business or I'm telling God what he ought to
right.
do, I'm in his business. Nobody's taking care of my business, right?
That's good.
I can't determine the idiot's going to cut me off on the freeway. I can't, he shouldn't cut me off. The truth of the matter is he did.
Right.
Right. What am I going to do with that? Right. It's not necessarily an answered prayer thing, but I have no, talking to someone this morning, I think if we're really honest and we thought about it, we could be absolutely terrified because there's probably about 99.5% of my life that I have zero control over.
Right. Yeah.
Right. I
Right.
may have some influence here and there. I'm not going to be able to figure out what the markets are going to do. I don't
Right.
know what the economy is going to do. I don't know what Russia's going to do. I don't know what China's going to do. I don't know what's going to happen on my job. I don't know what's going to happen anything, right? I
Right.
have so many things I have zero control over. So all I can do is control my responses and trust God that God, you've got my best interest at heart. You are going to see me through this. You're going to walk me through this. And I trust you. And I think sometimes he really steps back, kind of withdraws a little bit. Do you trust me?
Right.
You know,
And,
when I started praying, Lord, break me. And then those things started happening in my life. He's like, yeah, show me you love me was a prayer I had one year, and all this stuff came unglued in my life. And he's asked, do I still love you? Yes, Lord. Well, do you still love me? Yes, Lord. And wow, you do that. You start, you want to stop praying those prayers, but there's something that happens, and I'm in a place, I guess I'm getting old enough now that I'm starting to see it. I'm a little bit clear about what's really important, what's not. I still get lost. I still miss it from time to time, but I think that him withholding things from us is that desire to be found, that desire to be searched out. Yeah. If you seek me, you will find me, but he's not going to make it easy because
deepens
if he stood in
relationship.
front of somebody today and said, I am God, believe in me, they could walk away saying they had a hallucination, right? So that's never going to convince anybody. So he has to kind of hide himself in the cloud and say, come find me. I'm here, and I'm not going to do it the way you want to, and I'm not going to answer the way you want to, if at all, in all these circumstances. Every now and then you get that nugget. Every time you find it, and like I said, what happened here a couple of years ago with my retirement, God, he'll step in when he needs to. And I'm at that point. Tony, we worry about Jonathan from time to time. I said he loves Jonathan far more than I do.
Right.
Our goal is to leave him with the finances not being an issue for his brothers to take care of him. But if not, God's going to take care of it anyway, right? He's got it all under control, and
some of that
I can
too.
trust him.
Yeah, there's obviously the trust, and then God gave all of us, whether people acknowledge the Lord or not, creative powers, right? And we thankfully live in America where we have a little bit of freedom left. And Lord willing, well before that time comes, whether it's with family or others who come up with solutions and ways to help serve families, because you're not, I mean, this, I mean, you're not the only one facing. There are other families that are facing the same thing. And Lord willing, there'll be some really creative people out there go, hey, we're going to find a way to help. Right. And I know there are organizations out there, but, I think that's the other thing is to realize for us as we go about our daily work that we are also serving all of God's children, whether they know it or not. And the Lord uses those creative people. Plenty of creative people don't acknowledge God, but it still blesses us. So, yes, that deeper, the understanding that we say, there are unanswered prayers, and sometimes it's just silence on God's part, and be patient through that, and to mature over time. And ultimately, that sounds like, you've experienced it. I'm working to, be better at that. Is it changed the way we pray, right? It changes that
Yeah.
relationship. And that's ultimately what, right, the Lord is looking for, as you shared, right? He wants a relationship with us. This is a way to have a good, and it's even true as us as people. Now, it would be awesome if you had a Gulfstream 5 and you let Courtney and I and our family fly on it. That would be fantastic. But if that was the only reason I wanted to be around you or your kids, at some point you're like, I don't know that you're really my friend, Brian. You just like my
Right.
toys, right? You like
Right.
that we let you use the plane when we're not using it, and you're using our retreat space when we're not using it. But do you just want to hang out with me? And
Right.
right, that's that where the Lord, right, is wanting us to kind of want to hang out with him. Sometimes he'll let us fly on his jet, right? Sometimes he'll
Right.
he'll intervene in a real positive way. Other
Do I
times it'll
want
be
do I want the blessing or do I want the blessor?
right.
Right. And
And those
I'm at that point in my life that, and we kind of joke about it at our church because one of our other speakers, she almost always ends up in tears when she's speaking, and I almost always end up in tears when I'm saying. So we're cry buddies, right? And but it is just so rich. It is so rich, and to think that the God of the universe loves me,
right,
and to know that, when you lay down your head at night, just to know that it's okay between me and him,
right,
and tomorrow he'll be there, and if I don't make it to tomorrow, he's still going to be
right.
there, to live as die to Christ, to die as gain. It's all going to be okay. And just that peace, and that's what this world's looking for.
Right,
And but you don't get that by getting everything you pray for handed to you. You just don't.
right.
And we'd be ruined for it if we did.
I,
I firmly believe
well,
that. So,
I
and he's a good
appreciate,
father.
yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing, and I hope that the people who listen, and hopefully we get more listeners, will appreciate as well. I'm sure they will. Just it's not easy going through those things. Again, I do appreciate that you're willing to share it. I appreciate that, as I said, that you're still married, that you're together, that you care about your family, because plenty of people have had less difficult problems, whether they knew the Lord or not, and didn't make it. And that you're continuing
Uh,
on and have not only the attitude and the spirit that you have, but willing to share. And I think, again, that's the overcoming the power of your testimony, sharing that helps encourage us. And I appreciate that you shared that you've not mastered it. I know for me personally, what I appreciate seeing in my brothers um, is that okay? It's hey, I'm growing. I'm trying to do better. Not perfect, but here's what I've learned. Right? I'm not making the same mistakes I made last year or 10 years ago. Uh, to me, that's true authenticity. Right? It's not
mhm.
hey, I'm perfect. My life is great. It's here's what I'm
Yeah.
finding, right? I'm growing. I'm growing closer to the Lord. Here's what I'm learning.
Right.
That certainly encourages me. And you're a little bit older than I am, and I appreciate that. That's it's we need to see that in the different generations, right? You need to see that
Right.
from men who are a generation old, and you're probably not a full generation ahead of me, just a little bit, but we need to see
Yeah.
that
Half a generation.
right. You need to see that in men in their 70s and 80s that are still out there like, hey, God is still, I'm still
Yeah.
growing, right? Because I know when I'm
Well, yeah, I
70,
see, I see that in Brother East. We were, and I mean, here's the man that's close to 80 or something like that, still going strong,
right,
and talking about stuff he's learned or what he's heard and something new that he saw, and here recently somebody preached at our church and they said, I've read the Book of Acts. I don't know how many times I've read the Book of Acts and read these stories in the Book of Acts. And it's like I never saw that.
right,
It's like how could I miss that for 30 plus years? And there it was the whole time. And so, yeah, I mean, he's an infinite God, and we're going to have an eternity to explore
yes.
all about him, and we're never going to even get past the
Well,
surface.
I appreciate it. Thank you for sharing. And I hope that
Well,
we,
thank you for
yeah.
letting me piggyback on. Like I said, hey, I'm not going to try to take over your podcast or piggyback too much on you, but
Well, today
this
you
this
get
idea
to.
came to mind. I've thrown some others your way. Maybe we'll get together and
Yeah,
talk about
we
them at some point in the
definitely
future.
will add some of those others. And again, thank you, because we do need to be reminded that there will be times that the Lord answers our prayers, and sometimes the way we think, right? Because there some things might only have a handful, but there will be many times where the Lord doesn't answer them the way we anticipate, or there's a gap, or it's not the way we anticipate at all. And being aware that, hey, part of this is normal. It's not abnormal. That
Right.
great cloud of witnesses before us has experienced it. David has experienced it. Tanya has experienced it. Many others today have. And to be reminded of that is very helpful. So thank you. And so we
Right.
hope that our listeners will pray about this, will think about this. And thank you for tuning in. And we will see you next time.